Hello everyone, this is part 29 of What If Naruto Got Lost During His Training TS, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. Before he could successfully reach his target, being his wife, he was intercepted by Haruno Sakura. More like he had bumped into her. It appeared that the cosmic forces did not want him to have it easy this day. The girl noticed that it was Juashu that bumped into her. She noticed the rose in his hand, and immediately grabbed it thinking that it was for her, and that he had been rushing to give it to her as a hello present or something or other, and due to his haste had accidentally bumped into her. "Hey Sakura-chan," Juashu said as he got back onto his feet, "could you give me back that rose? It's not for you." "What? Oh. And I apologize for bumping into you," he said as he plucked the rose from her grasp while she was still in her shocked state. Juashu then created a single cage bushin, and handed the rose to it, and had it be the one to give it to his wife in his stead, seeing as he had stumbled on a problem. The clone took to the rooftops to avoid any further misunderstandings with any other kunoichi. When Sakura regained her composure after getting out of her shocked state, she punched Juashu with as much strength and power she could muster at the moment, which considering who her teacher was a lot. Juashu was sent flying into the concrete wall of a building owned by his own company, so he didn't have to worry about any financial repercussions of the actions of his pink-haired friend. He wouldn't have to pay for the repairs and such, but he'd make sure that his friend and her family did, slight revenge for some events that occurred when he was younger. "What was that for Sakura-chan?" he asked when he got back onto his feet. "You barker. I thought that flower was for me." "Sheesh, then how is it my fault?" "You bumped into me," she answered. For someone of her intelligence she sure wasn't showing any in this situation. "I apologized, and how does that have anything to do with your jumping to conclusions? Add that to the fact that since I haven't seen you in such a long time, there is the possibility, or rather the fact that my feelings for you have changed." "Huh," Sakura said, being caught off guard by Juashu's statement. "There is another girl in my life, sheesh, go ask your master about it, geez, and I really wanted to talk to you civilly too. Guess I'll just have to get back to looking for Ino," Juashu said. After hearing Ino's name, Sakura's mind jumped to conclusions once again, and sent Juashu flying once again. The blonde once again destroyed another wall of another building which he luckily owned. "Hey Barker, where's your Haitai 8? Sakura asked as Juashu got back to his feet. "I'm no longer a shinobi of Konoha," he answered as he dusted himself off. Once again jumping to conclusions, the thought that he had gone rogue had entered her mind, so she rushed him and attempted to punch him again. This time she missed by a lot, since at the last second he dodged her attack. "Geez, if fighting is the only way to get out of this mess, then fighting is what I'll do," he thought to himself, before unleashing an attack of his own. In the middle of one of the streets of Konoha, a fierce battle broke out, good thing that it wasn't anywhere near the residential district, or any busy streets. Sakura used chakra-powered punches and kicks, which destroyed the pavement, and the buildings and other structures of the immediate area. Juashu dodged all the attacks, and created several dozen clones to run interference, while he made his escape. As quickly as he could he entered the Shadow Realm and went about searching for Ino's shadow. Since he knew that she was training, most likely with Shikamaru, he would get to play a prank on the unsuspecting Nara. The cage bushin that had the honor of delivering the single rose to his creator's wife, had found himself some trouble of his own. He had changed his appearance into that of someone resembling one of the Uchiha. Most of those guys were pretty boys, which caused a considerable number of kunoichi into thinking that the single rose was for one of them. "What's with today?" the clone thought, "is it dumb kunoichi day?" What the clone, and Juashu, were unaware of was that there hadn't been that many romantic acts done by the male populace lately, and the females were experiencing a bout of romance deprivation, which was causing a majority of them to act in the irrational way in which they were acting. The clone had to deplete his considerable chakra reserves in order to create several other clones, 5 of which were assigned the mission of getting that one rose safely to Tsukiko. Once the girls realized that the rose wasn't for any of them, the battle royale began. Rather, once all of them collectively thought that the clone had led him on, or was stringing him along for some sick reason, they decided to pound him into mush. Juashu, and by extension his clones, wasn't someone who would willingly let himself be beaten up, plus there was still a mission that had yet to be completed. This made the clones prioritize survival first. It was a good thing that the clones and the girls were fighting on the roofs of the village, as well as the fact that none of them were students of the slug Sanin. Off in the distance, the lead clone could see that where the original was being decimated by a battle of clones versus Sakura. The pink-haired Kunoichi was demolishing a Rosuto Union district all on her own, with clones trying their best to contain her. The bad thing about the clones was that the ones that Juashu had created and left behind were all normal regular Kage Bushins. The only advanced Kage Bushin was the one who was given the task of delivering the rose, which was why it had a considerable amount of chakra at its disposal, as well as why it could, as well as its clones, survive after being pummeled by a relentless barrage of things from the Kunoichi that were attacking them. The 5-man advanced Kage Bushin cell wasn't faring much better as compared to the other clones. They had it harder. Every once in a while a clone separated from the group in order to prevent a number of shinobi from getting the rose. After all, sealing the rose in a storage scroll, and running in the direction which is away from the Hokage Tower, as well as those carrying and protecting the scroll not having Hitaiatis, more or less signified that these people were not exactly friendly towards the village. Most likely they were an amateur squad of enemy shinobi that had managed to steal something from the Hokage Tower and were making their escape. Most of their pursuers were Chunin and some low-level Junin. Being advanced Kage Bushin, these Bushins had a lot of chakra to spare, therefore each one that opted to stall created a couple clones itself. It was like the Uchiha Sasuke retrieval mission all over again, except this time the enemy were Konoha Nin and the team was made up of clones of one man. The objective itself was also different. Among the pursuers were Inuzuka Kiba and Aburame Shino. The presence of these two Chunin proved to be problematic to the delivery clone. Since once it was the only one of the group left, it was confronted by the two Chunin that did not want to budge. The clone then had no other choice but to create some clones of its own, all to try and get to its target as quickly as possible. Kiba, knowing that the Nin in front of him were clones, he and Akamaru quickly attacked with teeth and claws by using that technique of theirs that makes them drill into the enemy. Thinking that the clones would easily be defeated, they were surprised to find the clones relatively unharmed from the attack. Only one of their number had been killed. Shino had the honor of facing off against the delivery clone. He sent chakra-draining bugs the clone's way, which the clone managed to avoid for the most part. It created a few more clones to give it more time to escape. All through the encounter it kept running in the direction of its target. Shino pursued the delivery clone, leaving Kikai Bushins to deal with the clones that the clone created, all the while following the delivery clone. Suddenly the clones changed directions. The target had teleported to another part of the city. For what reason, the clone didn't care. The only thing in its mind was the completion of its mission. This action surprised the normally unsurprisable Aburame. If he is not escaping to the wall, then what is his true objective, thought the Aburame. The target has moved, need to lose this bug user, must get to target, were the mumbled things that left the clone's mouth, which were also the things that Shino was able to hear. Target. An assassination attempt. A K-ping. Shino thought. Those were the logical possibilities. The direction that the two were moving would lead them to the ninja academy, where many of the village's future were at the moment. It was nearing lunch time. The students would be out in the open, not necessarily vulnerable, but they would still be out in the open. Seeing as the clone, not that Shino could tell that it was a clone, was alone, the logical conclusion was that it was either an assassination attempt or a sabotage mission. The academy was in sight. The clone leaped onto the roof. Shino quickly threw some kunai in an attempt to stop the clone from doing whatever he thought the clones was planning on doing. The clone spun in place and dove for the ground below, which enabled him to narrowly avoid the projectiles. Shino sped closer. As the clone hit the dirt, it rolled, all the while unfurling the scroll and unsealing the rose. It ended up in a kneeling position in front of Tsukiko, who was sitting on a bench and was watching the children that were leaving the building to have their break. Juashu-sama ordered us to bring you this single rose. He intended to give it to you himself, but some complications arose which forced him to have us bring it to you. He also wanted us to tell you, soon. Once the rose was safely in Tsukiko's hands, Shino dropped down with a kunai in hand and espied the clone through its en, effectively king it. But unlike most clones, this one turned itself into a blood clone in order to give the illusion that it was an actual person rather than just a mere clone. Tsukiko screamed. The clone had acted perfectly. The act was enough to fool Tsukiko into thinking that the clone was not a clone, and was actually one of the Rosuto shinobi. One of her own. Her scream attracted the attention of Yahiko, who was in the vicinity. He quickly rushed to her aid. Even though she was a seasoned war veteran, she had not seen battle in quite a while. Whatever had made her scream didn't help her either, and Yahiko, in the absence of his daimyo, would make sure that nothing happened to his friend, who just happened to be the second most powerful person in all of Rosuto no Kuni. Shino felt someone moving towards him. Just in time he jumped back, avoiding a sly slash. In the spot which he had previously been standing on was a man completely clothed in black, like one of the shinobi of old. Yahiko had, while moving, unsealed his spymaster uniform and dr'd it over his form. After the failed attack, he took a defensive stance in front of Tsukiko, his ninjato in a reverse grip in one hand, and 3 kunai in the other. Before anything else could happen, 8 Anbu arrived on the scene, but before they could act or even utter a word, the S-clone burst into flames. Much like how the clones of the war burst into flames. When Tsukiko and Yahiko saw that happen, they both visibly relaxed, but Yahiko still had his wits about him, and was ready to spring into action at a moment's notice. Luckily Juashu had briefed his whole contingent about a situation such as this one occurring. If they were to see one of theirs S and burst into flames, it wasn't anything to worry about, and the man or woman wasn't really S. The Anbu were given the descriptions of the members of the Rosuto contingent, and therefore realized that 2 of the people involved in the incident were in fact members of the Rosuto contingent. Tsukiko and Yahiko both agreed to go with the Anbu to speak with the Hokage and resolve the issue or event that had occurred. On the way to the tower, Juashu joined the group. He had abandoned his quests of finding his friends once he felt that his wife was in danger, a feeling which passed a few minutes afterwards. But he went to her nonetheless, just to be on the safe side. Once they got to the tower, Tsunade was waiting for them outside of the tower, with all the other Konoha nin involved in the chase. Before Tsunade could say anything, Juashu beat her to it. I know for a fact that Konoha has not yet fully recovered from the Sound and Sand invasion 3 years ago. I also know that this village was one of the most peaceful of all shinobi villages. What I want to know is what happened. Juashu said, first that student of yours, Haruno Sakura, attacks me for insane reasons, then your kunoiki attack my delivery teams, then they are assaulted by your Chunin and Junin, and last but not least, he faced Shino. Shino, you're a friend and all. He faced Tsunade once more. Shino, K's one of my men. It's a good thing that that particular one was not human to begin with but an automatic puppet. He paused briefly to gauge the reactions of those present. Being a daimyo, as well as being a guest and not a shinobi of the village, the paperwork was filed 3 years ago. I'm sure that you just approved it without reading it since you don't know how to properly deal with paperwork. I'm appalled at the treatment I and my family have received today. I am very close to declaring war on the entirety of Hai no Kuni. Naruto. Juashu, Tsunade said, which earned her a collective gasp from the Konoha nin present. Konoha doesn't want a war. I apologize on behalf of Konoha for the actions of the few. No one was seriously injured. Can we just forget about this incident? Juashu-sama, Tsukiko addressed her husband, it was just a misunderstanding. Let's just put this behind us and forget it ever happened. You still have some other things to do, that are more important than this, right? So please just forgive Konoha, they're not like the 9. Fine. Juashu agreed to forget about the incident, since it was all a big misunderstanding, but of course he wouldn't just leave it at that. He dumped an entire report about the whole affair, in complete detail, on Tsunade's desk, that she might know of all the things that had transpired. Once Juashu left, with Tsukiko following him, Yahiko had a few words that were needed to be said. Know this, any more future acts of violence toward my lord, and there will be war, and Hai no Kuni will feel the wrath of Rosuto no Kuni. Kyubi no Yoko will seem like a child's temper tantrum compared to the hell that Rosuto will unleash. Yahiko warned, then left. He just vanished into the wind. He was not Juashu, which means that he just ran faster than even Meito Guy was used to tracking. Later that day, Tsunade decided to have her meeting with the village council as well as with the clan heads during the afternoon of that same day. Due to the events of the morning, She felt that it would be better to tell them about Juashu and his country sooner rather than later. She also had Shizune, Mikio also known as Dan, and Jiraiya look for the alleged file that she had signed regarding Juashu's resignation as a shinobi of Konoha. She needed that piece of paper as proof for some of the members of the councils in order to make sure that they did not try and do something stupid. Before the meeting commenced, Shizune handed Tsunade the piece of paper which showed that indeed Juashu was no longer a shinobi of Konoha. She told Shizune, Mikio, and Jiraiya to wait for her in her office. They were not members of either council, even though one of the three of them was the Gama Sennin. She started the meeting by telling the council members and clan heads the abridged version of the history of Rosuto no Kuni. She also had to explain to them that time travel was possible. They were forced to believe her, when they all heard a TSLE-layered voice say that if they did not believe the possibility of time travel and that it was part of the way Rosuto no Kuni worked, then they'd all be sealed by the Shinigami into teapots. The Shinigami then appeared before the very eyes ready to do just as the voice stated. They all knew that it was the real thing since the feeling that it gave off was unmistakably that of the death god, that and the god spat out the Sandaime and Yondaime who further threatened them into believing Tsunade. When they all agreed to the truth of the Godaime's words, the Shinigami's presence vanished from the room, taking the souls of the departed cages with him. Tsunade ended her little speech by confirming that Uzumaki Naruto and Rosuto Juashu were indeed one and the same. This little revelation and confirmation made some members of both council, as well as a few clan heads, to call for the deaths of the members of the Rosuto contingent, stating that they were demons or monsters and were planning something devious as the reason behind their pleas and accusations. These cries and arguments were swiftly met with a blast of king intent from their Hokage as well as some of the other councilmen and women and clan heads. Before the meeting was over, Tsunade had all the people at the meeting agree not to provoke the Rosuto contingent into declaring war, especially since they were still in the dark about the true military capabilities of Rosuto. It was nighttime, the streets of Konoha were painted black due to the darkness of the night. For some reason the street lights were not lit, and all was quiet, as if the whole village was in preparation for something sinister to transpire. For the first time during his visit to Konoha, Juashu had shut off all his senses in order for him to actually sleep, which was probably a bad thing. He knew what his very village was capable of, but he never suspected that what was to occur that night would be worse than he had ever imagined. Silently, in the way their legend was told, a number of Konoha shinobi snuck into the apartment complex. Their target was any member of the Rosuto contingent that they came across. There were 10 of them, Anbu, the best of the best, while at the same time the worst of the worst. These were not the regular Anbu who followed the orders of the Hokage and the Hokage alone. These were members of the illegal NE division, run by the old warhawk Danzo. The first person that the NE team came across was Yoshiko. One of the group placed her in a deeper sleep, using a genjutsu that was similar to the forced sleep technique. She was then carried out of the complex. The other members of the team made sure that no one witnessed what they were doing. Getting caught would be a very bad thing for Konoha. Once they had finally reached their base of operations, they presented her to Danzo, who smiled. Now that Demon won't be able to do anything that might endanger Konoha, with her as a hostage, we can control whatever army he has and crush our foes. The next day, the Rosuto party did not find anything amiss. Not finding Yoshiko in their midst, they chalked it up to her having gone out to explore the rest of the village or something like that. When they left the complex to spend the rest of the day doing who knows what, Tsukiko couldn't shake the feeling that some was very wrong with Yoshiko's disappearance, or leaving early. She asked Juashu to find out where the girl was or at the very least what she was doing. Juashu opened up his senses, activated and accessed his powers and abilities, and checked up on the girl. She was the youngest of the lot. Not a second later, Konoha felt the one thing that they never thought that they would ever feel again. The forgotten memories of Juashu's entrance into Konoha resurfaced, as well new ones were added to those ones. It may have been morning, but to the entire Hai no Kuni, it was twilight. Juashu in a fit of anger had made the moon block the sun. He had overridden the control and commands of Tsukiyomi himself, and the god did not mind at all. In the next moment, the whole of Konoha, including the rest of the Rosuto contingent, feared for their lives, as a chakra construct resembling the Kyubi towered over the village, and a wave of pure king intent washed over the village, this one stronger than anything that Token could muster. On top of the head of the chakra golem stood Juashu, in full battle gear. In one hand was his katana. He leapt off of the head of the Kyubi golem, landed in front of the Hokage Tower, turned around and sheathed his katana. What followed would have amazed the people present, if it weren't for the fact that they were all scared less. Each of the heads on the Hokage mountain dropped to the ground, as if they were decapitated from the mountain. Behind Juashu, the Hokage Tower exploded after a visible vertical S through its middle could be seen by people nearby. Juashu made sure that no one SD that day. Holding out his arms as if carrying someone, he willed Yoshiko to appear in his arms. Before he could leap back onto the head of the golem, Tsunade along with the Konoha nin that had come to their senses arrived attempting to block his path. Naruto, what do you think you are doing? Why did you suddenly attack? Tsunade demanded. Ask Oji-san's third greatest mistake, was the only reply that Juashu gave before leaping into the air, becoming the wind and taking all that was his with him. I shall snuff out the flames of the land of fire, any and all that oppose me shall suffer, Juashu announced for all of Hai no Kuni to hear. Blame your protectors for this tragedy. With those parting words the sun shone once again above Hai no Kuni, but a feeling of dread and foreboding settled on the populace of one of the 5 great nations of the elemental continent. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.